Hey everyone. So it's been about 4 years now since I last uploaded a couple of videos and added them to the Tristram Family's YouTube playlist as they were asking people to do for the Worldbuilders fundraiser that year. This year they're asking people to do that again and to share something good. And I was thinking about what I was going to do because I really wanted to make sure I added something again. And I had an idea that I would do a dramatic reading. And then I had sort of another idea to add a little twist to it, and I'm a little bit worried that what I'm sharing isn't really going to counter something good. So I am going to be falling back on what I have come to think of as the Jingle Bees defense, which is to say, it's for charity, so you can't get mad at me, right? See, I'm going to be reading a passage from a book that you may have heard of. But as I say, I'm going to be doing it with a slight twist because all of the characters are going to be cockneys. Okay. Chapter 1. A Place for Yobs. It was felling night, and the usual crowd had gathered at the Waystone Inn. 5 wasn't much of a crowd, but 5 was as many as the Waystone ever saw these days, times being what they were. Old Cobb was filling his role as storyteller and advice dispensary. The men at the bar sipped their drinks and listened. In the back room, a young innkeeper stood out of sight behind the door, smiling as he listened to the details of a familiar story. When he awoke, Taberlin the geezer found himself in a right palaver. They chawed his sword and nicked his tools and all. Key, coin and candle were all gone. But that weren't even the worst of it, you see. Cobb paused for effect. 'Cause the lamps on the wall was burning blue. Graham, Jake and Shep nodded to themselves. The 3 friends had grown up together, listening to Cobb's stories and ignoring his advice. Cobb peered closely at the newer, more attentive member of his small audience, the smith's apprentice. Know what I mean, Nipper? Everyone called the smith's apprentice Nipper, despite the fact that he was a hand taller than anyone there. Small towns being what they are, he would most likely remain Nipper until his beard filled out or he bloodied someone's nose over the matter. The boy gave a slow nod. The Chandrian. Too right, Cobb said approvingly. The Chandrian. Everyone and their bloomin' mother knows it's one of their signs. Now, he was... But how'd they suss him out? The boy interrupted. And why'd they bottle it and not do him in when they had the chance? Put a sock in it. You'll get all your answers before the end, Jake said. Just let him tell you. Keep your ear on, Jake, Graham said. Nipper's just curious. Drink up, geezer. I drank me drink already, Jake grumbled. I need another, but barman's off having a lark out back. He raised his voice, knocking his empty mug hollowly on the top of the mahogany bar. Oi, we're right parched in here. The innkeeper appeared with 5 bowls of stew and 2 warm round loaves of bread. He pulled more beer for Jake, Shep and old Cobb, moving with an air of bustling efficiency. The story was set aside while the men tended to their dinners. Old Cobb tucked away his bowl of stew with the predatory efficiency of a lifetime bachelor. The others were still blowing steam off their bowls when he finished the last of his loaf and returned to his story. Now, Taberlin needed to do a runner, but when he eyed the place up, he saw his cell had no door, no windows. All round him was nothing but smooth, hard stone. It was a cell no fella had ever gotten out of. But Taberlin knew the names of stuff, and stuff opened its ear holes and listened up real good. He told the stone it better break if it knows what's good for it, and the wall was stitched up like a kipper. Taberlin had a butcher's at the sky and stepped to the edge, looked down, and without a second thought, he took a tumble. The boy's eyes went wide. He never! Cobb nodded seriously. Taborlin fell, but he wasn't right bothered, 'cause he knew the name of the wind. So the wind listened up real good and all. He had a word with the wind, and it cradled and caressed him. It put him on the ground all la-di-da, set him on his plates, soft as Mother Brown's kisses. And when he got to the ground, and felt where they'd socked him one, he saw wasn't anything much at all now. Now, maybe that was just a right turn up for the books. Or maybe it had something to do with the amulet he was wearing under his shirt. What amulet? The boy asked eagerly through a mouthful of stew. Old Cobb leaned back on his stool, glad for the chance to elaborate. A few days earlier, Taborlin had met Delboy down the market, and even though Taborlin didn't have much grub, he shared some with that old chancer. He's played a blinder there. Delboy pays for kindness twice. Nah, mate, Jake grumbled. Have you got rocks in your head? Delboy says by this time next year we'll be millionaires. The innkeeper spoke up for the first time that night. Actually, you're missing more than half, he said, standing in the doorway behind the bar. I stick a pony in me pocket. I'll fetch the suitcase from the van, because if you want the best ones, but you don't ask questions, then, brother, I'm your man. The men at the bar seemed almost surprised to see Coat standing there. They'd been coming to the Waystone every felling night for months, and Coat had never interjected anything of his own before. Not that you could expect anything else, really. He'd only been in town for a year or so. He was still a stranger. The smith's apprentice had lived here since he was 11, and he was still referred to as that Ranish nipper, as if Ranish were some foreign country and not a town less than 30 miles away. Just something I heard once, Coates said to fill the silence, obviously embarrassed. Old Cobb nodded before he cleared his throat and launched back into the story. Now, this amulet was worth a few bob, but on account of Taborlin's kindness, Delboy let him have it cheap as chips. It was black as a winter night and brass monkeys to the touch, but as long as it was round his neck, Taborlin would be safe from bother, yobs and that. I give a lot of dosh for something like that round Brixton these days. Shep said darkly. He'd had drunk most and talked least over the course of the evening. Everyone knew that something bad had happened out on his farm last Sunday night, but since they were good friends, they knew better than to press him for the details, at least not this early in the evening, as sober as they were currently. Abso-bloody-lutely, old Cobb said judiciously, taking a long drink. Didn't know the Chandrian were yobs. I'd heard. They ain't yobs, Jake said firmly. They're some wide boys, got into a spot of bother with the razzers, and... Do me a favour, Jacob Walker, you having a banana? Cobb said sharply. The two men glared at each other for a long moment. Eventually, Jake looked away, muttering something that could, conceivably, have been an apology. Cobb turned back to the boy. That's the mystery of the Chandrian, ain't it? Who do they think they are? Where do they get to after they've done their bleeding larks? Wide boys? Yobs? Who knows? Every pillock claims they know. The story fell further into bickering at this point about the nature of the Chandrian, the signs that showed their presence to the wary, and whether the amulet would protect Taborlin from bandits, or mad dogs, or falling off a horse, or jam sandwiches. Things were getting heated when the front door banged open. Jake looked over. Oi, oi, Savaloy, about time you showed your mud, Carter. Tell this Wally the difference between a yob and a jam sandwich. Everyone... Jake stopped mid-sentence and rushed to the door. God blimey, governor. What's happened to you then? I'm so very, very sorry.